Hey, what is up, you guys? My name is Frank Mularcik, and today I want to share with you some of the updates that I've been making to my dividend tracking spreadsheet. And specifically, we're going to be looking at the pivot tables and the charts for looking at the dividends month over month. And so I've made some changes to these pivot tables a little bit, and I've made some changes to how I create the charts. So I'm actually going to show you how I use a dynamic range as the data input for the chart. So if you don't exactly understand what that means, don't worry about it. I'm going to explain everything in this video. So make sure you watch to the end so you don't miss anything. And if you guys are new here, welcome to the channel. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already so you can see new videos like this every time I post. And if you want to get notified every time I do post, make sure to hit the bell icon and make sure to like this video as it really helps the channel out and I appreciate it a lot. So let's get right into these spreadsheets. So right now we're just in my Google Sheets for tracking my dividends and my dividend investments. So this is a sheet that I have that sort of tracks the dividends month over month, and then I create a little chart. So this thing right here on the left side is called a pivot table. And if you don't know what that is or you don't know how to make one, I will leave a link to an earlier video I did up here. And if you skip to around the 3-minute mark, that's where I talk about the pivot table and explain how to create one. So go check that out first if you haven't already. And if you don't know how to make a pivot table, and assuming you've done that, now we can continue. So since I last showed that, I just had these dates here on the left as months, but now I have it as the month and year so that I will be able to track multiple years in this table here. And then I made these other sheets that just track the quarters and then the years so I can look at some different statistics and understand some different statistics when looking at my dividends over time. So basically what this table is doing, it's just looking at this data in the dividend payments tab. And basically in this tab, the dividend payments tab, I only have data up to row 47 here. And right now it looks a little odd because I have these rows hidden. So if you want to unhide these rows, you just hit this little arrow. And then all these rows are displayed. But just to make it a little more neat, you just right click on all the selected rows and then hide rows, and then all those rows are hidden. And it just looks a little more neat in my opinion. So back to what I was saying, all these rows underneath have nothing in them. So when I include them in the data range here on the right side, you can see I include up to row 1000. So all those rows that don't have anything in them, they just aren't included in this table. So that's sort of a dynamic range because I'm including all of the values that I want. And then as I add values to that list, then they're going to add in as well. But in this case, if I wanted to create a dynamic range for this chart that I have here, if I just put in from A2, this row, all the way to B, like 1000 or whatever, then it's just going to include this grand total row as well, which I don't want because it kind of skews my chart, and it's just not what I want. So the way I got around this is by using what's called a dynamic named range, or in this case, it's not technically that, but I'm kind of using a little hack. And I found this in an article I'll leave below. It definitely wasn't like solely my invention, I guess. I found the info on this. So right now, as you can see, I have these two columns here hidden, and these columns contain all the data that I'm using. So basically what I'm doing is I'm copying all this data that is in this pivot table, and I'm copying it over to these two columns. And then I'm just using the data in these columns in my chart. And as you can see here, it's just going from J3 to K1000. And so that's sort of the same method that I was using for the pivot table. So as I add more rows, as more rows get added to this pivot table, then more rows will automatically get added to these columns, and then this chart will be updated. And I'm going to show an example of this later, just so you can see how it all works. But the key is in these two cells right here at the top. So in this J1 cell, you can see it's equal to a count of B2 to B1000 minus 1. So basically what that's doing is it's getting the row number of the last cell that has a value that I want to get. So as you can see here, the last row that I want is row 9 because that's October, and that's the most recent month. So when I was going back and watching the videos to make sure everything I was saying is right and I didn't mess anything up, I did realize that I made a mistake here. So I wanted just to say it the right way so you guys completely understand. So this count equation or this count formula, it counts all of the cells with a numeric value. So in this case, I incorrectly said it counted this cell here that has a string in it, and it doesn't count this cell here with a 0, but in fact, it does count that cell with a 0 in it. And so it's counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cells here with a numeric value, and then I'm subtracting 1 here to get that 9. So if I do add like a 0 here, it's going to get to 10. And so that shows that it does count the 0 as a numeric value. So I just wanted to make that correction because I did say it a little bit incorrectly. So hope that helps. And then what I'm doing here is I'm putting in quotation marks the range except for the row number of B, and then I'm appending or concatenating the row number by referencing this cell that the row number is in, and that's J1. And this little ampersand, that's just a concatenation. So it just makes this first part of the string and that cell all one string. So it's all one piece and it's one string. And then I go here to the first cell of my table here, and I use the function indirect. And what indirect does is it basically takes a string that's a range, and it looks at the values in that range. So I'm just looking at the values in the range A2 to B9, and I'm putting them here in this table. And then those are the values that I'm using in my chart here. So if that's still a tad confusing, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into the dividend payments. I'm going to add a payment that's in Q1 of 2022. So in that case, we're going to get a new month, we're going to get a new quarter, and we're going to get a new year. So you can see all those update because I have similar things in these other sheets as well, but I just have them hidden at the moment. So if I go into a payment, let's just do Cisco again. And then since it last paid in October, it's probably going to pay in January, I believe. November, December, January. Yeah, that's right. So we'll just make it the same date. It really doesn't matter what the date is as long as it's in Q1 of 2021. And then we'll say I have 0.36 or 36 cents a share again, and then the same amount of shares. It really doesn't matter. And then since I don't have this sum dragged down, I'll just make it 53 cents. And then once we go back, we see that we have a new row here that is January of 2021. And we can see that this right here updated to be 10 instead of 9. And then this range updated to be A10 or A2 to B10. And also we got a new row here, and that caused a new column in our chart here. So that's exactly what we wanted. And then if we go to quarterly, we can see the same thing. I have 2021 Q1 listed. I'm going to have that here as well. And of course, the trend line is going down because that one was a really small payment. That's just one payment from the whole quarter. And then same thing with the year here. That's showing that as well. So this is a really interesting tool, I think. I definitely want to give credit to the guy who wrote that article. I think his name was Ben Collins. I'll definitely leave that in the description. That definitely helped me figure out how to do this. But as you can see, I deleted that entry in the dividend payments, and then now it's all back to normal. And then I'm going to hide these rows again just to make it a little bit more aesthetic and act like I'm not using this little hack around technique. So it's not exactly what I want to do, but the problem is you can't put any sort of formula in this data range for a chart. It has to be just a range. So that's basically how I do that. And also, unfortunately, at this point, it can only go up to 1,000. If I put in like 1,001, it says, please enter a valid range. But I think that's just because I don't have that many cells. So I think if I get values all the way down to cell 1,000, it will be able to add additional cells still. So one other thing I wanted to mention is that, as you can see in this pivot table for the monthly dividends, there's this extra little column here with a 0 in it at the bottom, and I'm not really sure exactly why this is. So that kind of dictates what my formula here with the count is in this cell. But for example, in the quarterly dividends, for some reason that row with the 0 in it is above all the values. So therefore, my equation with the count is a little bit different. So you might just have to look at that for yourself and sort of figure out exactly what the equation should be and kind of play around with it a little bit. But that shouldn't be too difficult. And if you do have any questions, just reach out in the comments and I'll help you out as best I can. Or you can DM me on Instagram if you want me to look at it a little more closely. So the quote of the video is, "Without continual growth and progress, such words as improvement, achievement, and success have no meaning." And that one is from Ben Franklin. And, I'm honestly just respect Ben Franklin a lot. He was a great man. His family wasn't necessarily poor, but wasn't super rich. And he was working for his brother, and his brother, he didn't feel was appreciating his work. So he basically left his brother and started out on his own. And, that's sort of the American mindset, entrepreneurship, all that stuff. And he became really successful. He was really instrumental in our country's founding and all of that stuff. So he just had a big impact on our country, I believe. And he also had a lot of wise things to say. So I appreciate what he has to say here. And this quote really sort of embodies what I'm trying to do with my investing portfolio and my spreadsheets. And that is a slow but steady growth. You don't have to do anything super crazy, but if you just keep working on it slowly and steadily over time, you're going to progress and you're going to see a lot of growth. And hopefully it's going to be amazing how far you've come without too much effort every day. But if you put a little bit of effort in every day, that's what matters. So that's going to wrap it up for this video, guys. I will leave some resources that I did use to figure this out in the comments below, or in the description, I mean. So big thanks to Ben Collins. He had some info on there. I mean, I haven't talked to him or anything. I'm not affiliated with him at all, but I just found his info really helpful. So feel free to check those out if you need some additional help. And if you still can't figure it out, just leave a question in the comments, or feel free to DM me on Instagram. It's just Frank Mularcik, and I'll try to help you out even more if I can. So until next time, I'll see you later. Bye.